A massive update has dropped for Jojo's Bizzarre Adventure All-Star Battle R. Huge balance patch covering a lot of the roster, a new stage, and 2 new characters absolutely free. At first glance, this is an incredible update. However, once you play it, you might realize that not all of this is exactly new. Let's look into it. First, we have the new stage, the Kennedy Space Center, a stage from the end of Jojo's Part 6 that was actually playable in the original game. Now, obviously, this wasn't just ported into the remaster, it received the same treatment that all the other stages did. It got a better resolution, but it is essentially a stage that we previously had that was cut from this game only to be delivered later. This is totally fine, by the way. After all, it is a free update. It just makes the update seem a little bit more bloated and full of new stuff than it actually is. And the same goes for one of the new characters, Father Pucchi, Final Form. This version of Pucchi has a really cool gimmick. He can evolve his own stand, gaining new abilities. When you start a match, he's pretty weak compared to most of the roster and has a very limited moveset, but that's because Father Pucchi, Final Form, has a winning condition. If you find an opening, you can just talk to your baby, which fills up this meter at the bottom of the screen. Once it's full, your stand will evolve and Father Pucchi feels like a complete character at last. It can take a while for you to fill up the entire bar, but the good news is this bar will carry through rounds, so you can play the long game. The main goal is to level up your stand so you finally have a full moveset, but if somehow you find a way to land your GHA, your level 2 super, which takes a really long time to activate, then GG's, you have won the game. The opponent will be slowed down, you are super fast, there's basically no way for you to lose at this point. It is a winning condition. Now, if you've played the original All-Star Battle game on PlayStation 3, all of this sounds very familiar, because it is. This is exactly how Father Pucchi used to play before the remaster. In a way, the Father Pucchi that comes with the base roster is more of a new character than this free DLC is. And that's already 2 pieces of content that were in the original game and were withheld from the remaster until now. Why? Well, my guess is because they didn't want to spoil Part 6 of the show. Part 6 is currently airing on Netflix, and this DLC dropped on the same day as the season ended. In order not to spoil the stage and Father Pucci's abilities, they chose not to release him until people could see it for themselves in the show. I respect their effort to preventing spoilers, but it is weird that a game that is willing to spoil abilities that happen far in the future, with Part 7 and Part 8 characters being present in the roster, was being so careful with spoilers specifically for Part 6. That said, credit where credit is due, Weather Report is a brand new character that was not present in the previous game. And he is one of the most popular characters they could have ever added. Before released, I polled the community on which new characters they'd like to see in All-Star Battle R, and Weather Report was number 2. Number 1 was Diego, by the way, who made it to the base roster. This means that out of all the DLC they could have had planned, Weather Report was probably going to be their best bet if they wanted to sell some season passes. And they just released him for free, and that is awesome. They have a season pass, like I said, and all they ever promised was Father Pucci would be free. I don't think they ever promised anything else, and yet they went above and beyond and gave us a very popular character, a widely requested free DLC character. And is he fun? Absolutely. Weather Report is a stand character, meaning his moveset changes with and without the stand. Without the stand, he's got a projectile that helps him in neutral, another projectile that sets up a trap on the ground, and an electrical attack that's really good for ending combos or countering jump-ins. On top of that, he's got an ability that pulls the enemy towards you with wind, but this costs 1 bar of meter. And he's got an install where he gets thunderclouds around him, causing his attacks to deal extra damage and some moves to change properties. And if the opponent attacks you, they'll be taking a little damage as well, in addition to this making you projectile invulnerable to most projectiles in the game. So it's a really powerful install, but it constantly depletes bar and goes away after a bar meter is gone. With the stand, he still has the electrical attack as well as the install, but he loses the wind pull ability. Instead, he gains a command normal that's an overhead, and he gets this special that's so much fun to use. Weather Report will dash horizontally, diagonally, or vertically, and he can link any 2 directions together. This gives him so much combo freedom, because he will launch the opponent and allow you to extend combos just like that. But even on block, this can be pretty useful, because after the 2 dashes, you can choose to back away with the 3rd dash, or if you get the hit, you can simply explode. This move is what makes this character fun in my opinion, but we're not done. Because he's still got supers, and the level 2 is pretty standard. The activation is slow, so you're gonna need some specific combos for this to work, but the level 1 is very unique. It creates a rainbow, and if the opponent touches it, they become a snail. They can't do anything but slowly move forward or backwards, which means you can just combo them some more. Weather Report has a lot of ways to spend meter, be it the install, the wind pull, the snail super for extra damage. Something I often do is throw a projectile and flash cancel to follow it and just win neutral like that. So I feel like he can be an absolute meter sponge, but he deals some good damage without spending meter too. So this guy feels pretty powerful to me. But we're not really here to discuss tier lists. What matters the most in a DLC to me is that the character is fun to play, which is definitely the case with Weather Report. Usually when DLC drops, we make a video asking if the DLC is worth worth your money. And that's the main thing that I usually look at, is the DLC fun to play. With Weather Report, if he was a paid character, I'd say he was definitely worth it. So the fact that he is free is no small gift from Bandai Namco and CyberConnect 2. And on top of that, we got this huge balance patch that I'm not gonna go into all of this. Some characters got significant changes, though I'd say most of them just got some bug fixes. Still, it's a big patch and I'm happy to see the game receive this treatment. I am just a little bit confused as to who is this for? Not just the balance patch, everything. Back when Risotto came out, I sat in a ranked match queue on DLC release day and found no one. For this DLC, I did the same again, found not a single soul in a full 10 minutes. This is on PlayStation, where the game seems to be pretty close to dead. It's not completely dead yet, because the other day I did find a match, my first ever match on PlayStation, and this was my opponent's record. This is what the game is matching you up against if you are coming in fresh into Jojo's All-Star Battle. And this was the only player I could find. Calling a game dead is something that gamers do way too much, usually to justify or hate on a game they no longer play. But to me, a dead game is whenever this happens. You cannot find matches online anymore. Sure, you could go to a Discord server and find some opponents there, but that is something the mainstream audience is never going to do. And once it gets to a point where it's a Discord game, it's definitely not justifying these big investments in updates. On the PC, matches seem a bit easier to find. Today I found this one which reminded me of why I never want to play this game online ever. This was an awful experience. But if I can find matches on PC a lot easier than on PlayStation, does that mean the game is more popular on the PC? Because if that's the case, we can look at Steam charts, and the numbers are not very promising. 400 players worldwide, and that's it. It spiked to 800 the day the patch released, but this seems to be a very low number, and they have this full roadmap full of content with more DLC characters and balance updates every time a character comes out. And look, this roadmap is good. This is what should happen, but in the end, it's meaningless if no one's playing the game. There is a competitive community for this, for sure. In fact, I might be working with them in the future. I am not trying to dismiss those players at all. What I'm saying is, how can you justify this much content for a game that's pretty close to dying? There's really one thing that can bring it back from the dead, and that's a netcode update. Not even gonna say the word rollback, because that seems to be a poison that just burns Bandai Namco from the inside every time they hear it. But something, because this is absolutely unplayable. The competitive community doesn't even want to deal with this netcode most of the times, because they host their own server, similar to what I do with Demon Slayer Wanted. Delay-based is where fighting games go to die nowadays, and that's becoming more and more obvious to everyone except the people behind the games. But what makes this really disheartening is that I like Jojo's All-Star Battle R. I think the game is really fun, and I'm so excited to check out the new characters in DLC. But if all I can do with them is play in the lab and maybe spar against a friend or two, then at that point the DLC might not be worth your money, no matter how good the DLC is. I want to keep covering Jojo with every update, but it's definitely getting harder to do so. That said, there are still a healthy number of highly requested characters that could make it into the game as DLC. Will they be enough to revive it? Without a netcode update, I seriously doubt it. But if you're curious as to what characters they could bring in the future, according to a fan poll that I made a few months back, you could check this video right here. It was done before release, a lot of characters made it already, but the ones that didn't could very well end up on the season pass. I'll see you guys there. Bye!